Hello and welcome to the Land of Brand Laboratory, or as we like to call it, the LOBoratory for short. This is your host, Holly Chantal, and I am your lead Mad Brand scientist and the founder of the Land of Brand. If you've never joined us before, this is a weekly community call, and we meet every Wednesday, 12 o'clock Eastern Time, and we talk about different experiments, or as I like to call them, I like to call them experiments, but they're actually strategies for creating a brand that is an experience and engages your audience. So creating something that stands out in the marketplace and gets people to pay attention and ultimately become raving fans. So today we're going to pick up where we left off last week. We're doing a 4-part kind of mini series on creating your bucket list for 2015. And just to recap very quickly, your bucket list is basically a broken down list of your goals. So we're taking your big picture goals for next year. We're breaking them down into bite size, as I like to call them, kickable pieces. So things that you can easily implement and feel like you're accomplishing something instead of taking a huge goal and being frustrated that you're not getting to there or trying to create a New Year's resolution that you can't stick to. Instead, we're choosing really small bite-sized piece items that you can stick to and that you can feel awesome about checking off of your list. So today we're focusing on your offerings and what it is that you're going to be selling in 2015 and how you're going to go about creating those. So without further ado, let's go ahead and head on over to the presentation. And while I'm bringing that up, on the chat, I would love for you to share what's on your bucket list already. So last week, I talked about that our goal is to get to 100 items. So if we're going to do break that into 4 weeks, that would mean 25 each week. So if you have any items on your bucket list that you are willing to share, then please go ahead and put those into the chat. I'm just going to go ahead and make this full screen. Okay, so you should be able to see my presentation. All right. So here is the game plan for today. We're going to talk about why I'm a big fan of stew and what that means for your creativity. The 2 sides of your offerings plan, what to do if you're new versus what to do if you're old, or I mean experienced, how to break them into kickable items, and by them I mean your offerings. So a year is a long time, and I know that when I was first starting my business, looking a year in advance was pretty much impossible. I couldn't see that far ahead because I didn't know what I'd be doing. And even now, I still have difficulty planning things too far in advance. I like to look at my business and kind of planning what I'm going to do in 90-day increments. So the way I look at this is that there's pros and cons to doing it this way. And the way I look at it is that I'm just trying to get my creative juices flowing. I'm looking at what is possible for next year. What could I possibly add to the Land of Brand? And what could where do I want to spend my time creating? And one of the advantages of planning so far in advance is that you can stew on your ideas at the right times. So if I'm thinking about I'm thinking about offering a program on how to launch your product, and that actually is something I'm planning for hopefully soon. And being able to stew means that you are thinking about the topic, what you would put into that product, and maybe starting to bring bits and pieces together. Because putting together a product or a program is a really big undertaking, and part of the big undertaking is not necessarily the creation of it, is understanding what you should be putting in it and what you shouldn't be. And I have had stewed on the idea of a marketing course for a long time before we released Blog Marketology last year. Literally, I think I have notes, maybe over the last 2 years, I've probably written out outlines 2 or 3 times. So I've been stewing on it for a while. The actual program didn't take that long to put together. I think it took me only a week once I had actually decided on a structure and a format and what I was going to put into it. It didn't take that long to create. I hadn't really been planning ahead on when I was going to offer it. It just merely was something in my little I have a handy dandy purple idea book that I carry around with me everywhere. And it's something that had been in there for a long time. So by planning your offerings ahead of time, you're going to know kind of what your deadline is for your stewing period. Or if you like to kind of meditate on different ideas, then you know when would be appropriate. So if I'm offering this particular program in the fall, then I don't necessarily need to be thinking about it now. I should be meditating and thinking on what I'm going to be offering in the next month, if that makes sense. It also allows you to plan your marketing calendar, and I'm going to show you towards the end of the presentation kind of what a timeline might look like, and it will help you identify when you should be promoting certain programs, when it might be helpful for you to bring in JV partners, that's joint venture partners that might promote those programs for you. It also will help you know when you should be writing about certain topics on your blog, other types of promotion that you're doing, other types of content you're writing. You'll know when are the best times to be doing that and what topics should you be writing on during those times. And that will help you kind of bring both your marketing and your sales process together under one roof. And the only con is your plans may change between now and then. And this is probably what hangs me up, even though it's really not a disadvantage, because you're doing all this pre-planning, you have all this structure in place already, and that's only going to help you. If your plan changes and you're going to offer something else, or you decide not to offer something, there's no shame in that. As long as it's not because you're just procrastinating or you're just being lazy, which for the most part is not usually the case. If you decide to offer something else because you had some inspiration or you learned something new and you want to share that with your audience, that's okay. Just change the item on your timeline. And so for me, the only con is that plans might change, and the planning I'm doing now is for nothing. Really, it's not taking me a long time, so that's okay. And I do have a really hard time looking that far in the future if it's for something I haven't created yet. And I'll show you kind of the difference between offerings you currently have and offerings you're creating, and why that might be a challenge. So when you're planning your offerings, there's two sides. Basically, the dollars and cents, I just thought that was clever. But basically, what makes sense for you to spend time on this year, and how much money do you want to make? When you're planning your offerings, you're really planning your lifestyle for the next year. If all you're offering is one-on-one coaching, if you're established, then that might become overwhelming because you're trading time for dollars. If you're new, that might be okay because really you're learning your system and you are getting clients, learning your marketing, learning your business before you really want to spend a lot of time creating passive products that might not sell. So when you're new, you're testing content, and when you're experienced, you're leveraging content. So when you're planning your offerings, you want to think, okay, where do I want to spend my time? Am I someone that really likes creating content? Should I be writing an ebook? Should I be writing home study programs? Do I know my content well enough that I could structure something like that to be consumed passively? And that's something that not everyone thinks of when they're creating a home study program or a group program, is that your content has to be pretty well structured, and you have to know what the client is going through at those different stages in your program to make sure you're answering the right questions and that you're giving them the guidance they need to actually consume and complete it. In order to do that, you'd sometimes have to run it live a couple times, or you have to run it one-on-one a few times to work out all the kinks. So where do you want to spend your time this year? What would make the most sense for you to focus on? And then how much money you want to make basically is you planning your pricing, planning how much you're going to need to market each program to sell a certain number of them. So if you're looking at their suite of offerings, and you have your one-on-one programs versus your home study versus your groups, and you're looking at what the different price points are, you can decide how much you need to sell of each in order to reach your income goals. This is really important as well. And I always recommend kind of overshooting your goals in case something doesn't go quite as planned, you don't sell as many of a product that you're creating, or you might decide not to create that product in the first place. So what I used to do, and things have changed, but what I used to do when I first started out and I was working mostly one-on-one is that I would set my goals based on how many one-on-one clients I had to have in order to reach my income goals. So I had kind of like my low barrier goal and my high barrier goal. And low barrier goal was basically, you know, how much do I need to support my lifestyle, support my business, be able to grow my business, and feel comfortable and not have to be worrying about money. What would that look like, and how many one-on-one programs do I need to sell in order to do that? Because that was, what I was primarily focused on at the time. And then the group programs and the home study programs took a back seat in that they weren't a total priority in order to, if I created a program and it didn't sell, I didn't have to suddenly be worried if I was going to be able to, pay my rent or anything like that. So when I started out, I focused on my one-on-one because that was really strong, and then started rolling out group programs and home study programs more gradually. They were kind of took the back seat. Now it's kind of flip-flopped where when I create a group program or a workshop, I feel more confident in the content that I'm creating because, I've done it before and my methodologies and systems are much more solid. So now I focus on that probably more than the one-on-one, because the one-on-one is kind of sustaining itself and doesn't require as much marketing anymore. So now all of the marketing you see is mostly for the groups and the the home study products. So you'll see that your business shifts as you move from being a new coach to an experienced coach. And some of you may have already seen this shift. So if you're a new coach, you're going to want to focus on creating your system. So creating your own methodology. And in order to do that, you need to be working with one-on-one clients. Because when you start out, typically you are customizing your program based on the client, what they're looking for, and you'll start to see patterns emerge and you'll start to create a certain way of doing things that's unique to you. So that's why you want to work with as many people one-on-one as possible in your first year. You also want to write a lot. And what you're doing here is you're writing down articles, you're writing special reports, you're creating content. Every time you write an idea and flesh it out into an article or into a special report, you're honing in on your message. And you're honing in again on your system, because when you put pen to paper, that's when you start to decide and figure out, does this really make sense? And you'll start to flesh out your ideas and add to them and really start creating your own intellectual property, which as a coach, that is your brand. Your intellectual property is the most valuable asset that you're going to be creating. So if you're new, focus on that. Focus on marketing your one-to-one product, writing a lot. So writing strategies, writing tips, writing ideas you have, writing them on your blog and your articles. If you're doing a community call like this, share them in your community calls and start honing in on what are your ideas and what is your brand about. And then if you're experienced, so you already have your signature program, you're already have booked solid with one-on-one clients, and you feel pretty comfortable and confident as a coach, now you start leveraging that intellectual property and that content that you've created into group and passive programs. So now you've reached that critical mass of one-on-one clients and your list is big enough to start supporting filling groups. Groups are tougher than sometimes people think because you have to get a critical mass of people to sign up all at once, which makes it both more difficult and easier in different ways. So a group might be easier to sell because it does have a limited time frame, it does have a limited number of people, so it creates a little bit more urgency. But on the other hand, it can also be tough because if you don't have enough of an audience and enough of a critical mass of people to sign up, then you might not be able to run the group. So it's a catch-22 there sometimes. And that's why you want to hone in on your content and really build a reputation and then start running groups. So if you're experienced, now you want to start focusing on leveraging, creating passive programs, home study programs, adding new systems and tracks to your offerings. So at the Land of Brand, we've always had the website design program. That was our first offering. Then we created the branding game, which was the kind of precursor to the website design. We'd done it one-on-one with our website design clients, and then we kind of broke that part, the planning, basically planning your website, planning your brand. We broke that out into its own separate offering for people that didn't necessarily want to do a website with us or weren't ready for a website at that time. And they just wanted to be able to do the branding piece so that they knew what their message was and how to describe what they do. So you can start doing that as well. Now we've added the marketing program. So we've added kind of a new system or a new track for our clients. And this isn't on a slide, but I'm going to share it with you. This is a part of the branding game, which is, like I said, planning your brand. But we call it the sales highway. And really what you're doing is you're planning out what are your offerings, and then when we're talking about adding new systems and tracks, if you look at the journey that your target audience, your target client is taking, you want to look at what are the different phases they're going through and how can you serve them at those different phases. For example, in the website design program, we have, we're taking, we work with a lot of new coaches, and we're helping them develop their business idea and their message and what are their offerings. And then that leads into the website design itself, where we're actually creating the website and helping them write their content. And then the piece that was missing was once their website was launched, what do they do with it? How do you market it? So then we added the blog marketology, which takes them from launching their website and starting to build visibility around that brand. So look at your business. What might be missing? What might be a next step that you could take your clients on? Could you create an offering around that? And that's how you start adding tracks. And the reason why we call it a sales highway is because each offering leads one into the other. So they're kind of going down the highway. Each offering leads one into the other. They don't have to necessarily complete all of them in order. And they don't actually have to go through all of them. So if someone comes to us, they already have a website, they already have a brand, they just need the marketing, they can come in on the highway, on the on-ramp in the marketing course and then leave. Or if they just need a website, they can come in on the website and they can choose whether they want to continue on with the marketing or not, or leave. So there's multiple entry and exit points into this sales highway, which is basically your suite of offerings. The only caveat is every single one of the offerings has to be focused around a singular message, which is your brand. So they all have to fall under your brand message and your brand promise, what makes you special, why people should hire you, so that you're not creating confusion. That was kind of a side note. I hope that wasn't too confusing because I didn't actually plan on talking about that. But it just seemed like it was a good fit here, and that it might help you understand how to plan offerings in a strategic way so that you can lead your client, to continue to work with you. Because if you're attracting the right clients, then you obviously want to continue working with them because they're a lot of fun to work with. I absolutely love my clients and I don't ever want them to leave. So by creating these different offerings, you're creating different ways for people to engage you and to continue working with these awesome, awesome people that you're attracting. So what kinds of offerings could you create? This is just kind of a brainstorm list, and if you have any that you'd like to add, you can feel free to type them into the chat. But obviously we start with one-to-one coaching systems, group coaching program, which could be a replication of your one-on-one system. You're just doing it with one-to-many instead of one-to-one. Or it might be something completely different. The blog marketology program was a group coaching program, but it was something that I've never done one-on-one before. It was just basically a marketing methodology that I was teaching. Home study coaching program. So again, you can either take your one-to-one system or your group system and bring it into basically a passive product that people can do on their own. Webinar or teleseminar series, which is kind of like what we're doing now, except this is free, where we're doing 4 webinars that are all around a singular topic. And you could do this for free, like I am, just for fun, or you could do it as a paid offering as well. Telesummits or online conferences are a great offering. Ebooks or special reports. podcasting or a community call. Podcasting is really big right now, so that's something that I think we're probably going to add in 2015. Community call is what we're doing right now, which is the LOBoratory call. Basically a free call where everyone calls in and learns from you and can talk to each other and that kind of thing. Mastermind. So a mastermind could be something that's ongoing. It could be for current clients. It could be for people that are in your community, an extension of your community call. Live events or workshops. And I'm sure there's more that you can add. These are the ones I could come up with off the top of my head. But as you see, there are lots of options. And if you're looking at these and you're probably thinking, okay, if I wanted to do that, how could I? How do you start a community call? How do you start a mastermind? How do you get people in it? These are all questions that come along with any one of these programs. So that's why you don't want to choose all of them, because learning how to do all of these in a year would be very difficult. But we're going to strategically choose which ones you want to focus on. And that's why you want to make sure that where you're spending your time makes sense. So it's not just about the money and how much you're going to make from these kinds of programs. It's, does it make sense? Is this how you want to be spending your time? So now you're going to pick your offerings and line them up. So we are going to pick which offerings you're going to create, which ones we already have, and then putting them on a timeline for the year. So this is the example of my timeline. So first, look at what we already have. We already have the branding game, blog marketology, and website design program. Those are created. They can be delivered at any time. They are done. So we're going to put these on the timeline first, and I'm going to show you the timeline on the next slide. Because they're already created, so it's not going to take you a lot of time to launch the program, promote the program. You probably have systems already in place to do that. So we're not really having to focus a lot of time on creation there. Then you're going to look at what you want to create. So these are 3 things that I'd like to add to the Land of Brand offerings in the next year. One is a program on creating your information product or signature program. I haven't decided yet, and launching it. And then a year-long brand mastery mastermind. This is something that I've wanted to do for the last couple of years, and it's on my bucket list that this year will be the year that we launch a mastermind program. And then an ebook, which is something that I'd never considered doing before, but I'm realizing I've wanted to write a book for a long time, but I think I am actually going to write an ebook instead. So that's something that I'm working on. Actually, I'm working on it now. But in 2015, I'd like to launch that. So that's on my bucket list. So then you put these where they fit in. And what I usually find is, because these are all top of mind right now, I want to do them all at the beginning of 2015. But then when you put it on your timeline, you realize that it's really not feasible. So let's look at a timeline. You can see my terrible handwriting. Hopefully this is readable. I basically did this on a piece of paper and took a picture of it with my cell phone. So hopefully this makes sense. So this is the timeline, and what we've put is the known program, which is blog marketology. I'm going to run that twice a year. So that will launch again in February and then again in the fall. So that one's already set in stone. I don't really need to do much for that other than put it in my marketing calendar, promote. And that, because that's so set in stone and it's already created, that's something that I might find joint venture partners to come in on and promote. And it makes it much easier to plan ahead, because most people want to plan ahead for their own marketing calendars and their own promotional reasons. Then we have, I have things with question marks. So product launches, signature program, these are kind of the same offering. Not sure if I want to do it right away, beginning of January. I've had some people ask about it already. That's why I'd want to do it in January. It's also coinciding with something else that I'll be announcing in a couple weeks. So I might still do it in January. So some of these things are going to be not set in stone, and that's okay, because this is basically a preliminary plan. And I'll show you how to break these things down into bucket list items in just a moment. Ebook, I'd like to launch that by March. And then the Mastermind, that's something else I'd like to launch. Again, I wanted to do it in January, but everything was piling up for January and February, and I knew that wasn't going to make sense. So I've pushed that tentatively to launch in March after the first quarter. So this kind of gives you an idea of a timeline, and it helps you move things around, because if you have all these different things that you want to create, you start to realize that you have to spread them out in order to give yourself time to promote, in order to give yourself time to create, and to not exhaust people always trying to, sell them into the next thing. Because even though I'm really excited about these programs, not everyone is excited about hearing about them all the time. And then at the top here, these are all ongoing programs that I don't have on the calendar for promoting it. But as I flesh this out, I will put in specifically when these will be being promoted. So the website design program is going all the time, but every now and then I do like little promotions or kind of bring awareness to it. Like next week, we're going to be doing a planning your website for 2015 webinar. So you can look for that email. Web copy workshops, again, that's something that's always ongoing, but I've never promoted it before. And I think I might try to do that next year. Branding game home study, I'm going to create an evergreen system for that. So that's on the bucket list. And coaching and consulting, that's always something there, but again, not something that I typically promote. So when you're looking at your ongoing programs, then you start to fill in, when you don't have a time-sensitive program, you can promote these things. So that just gives you just a little bit of an idea of what a timeline might look like for when you're offering and when you're promoting. And that's why it's important to plan ahead, because your marketing calendar is really important to make sure that you're blocking off enough time and that you're strategizing as best as possible. So now let's start the process of breaking these down. So if we're taking any offering that you want to create, it has, if we're breaking the project down, there's 3 aspects you need to look at. The first aspect is the content itself. So the actual content that is going into the program. The promotional materials, which is often overlooked. And then the delivery method and materials. So what does this mean? So the content itself is pretty self-explanatory. Let's take an ebook, for example. That would be the actual writing of the ebook. Promotion materials will be basically, how are you launching that program? What emails do you need to write? What webinars do you need to write? What sales copy do you need to write? What follow-up series do you need to write? All of the different parts that go into marketing and selling the product itself. And that's where many people get hung up. That's why I'm thinking about offering a program about that and walking you through the process. And then delivery method and materials. So it's not enough just to create the product. You also need to understand how you're going to deliver it. So ebook is easy. You put it in you package it up in a PDF and you put it in a shopping cart and sell it. Though if you've never done that before, then that's not easy, and it's something you're going to need to spend time on. If it's for instance, a group workshop, then it might be worth taking time to figure out your webinar software. How are you doing your replays? How are you going to host it? For this last course I did, I used Jigsaw Box, and that was a test to see a different way of running a course, and it worked out really well. So understanding the delivery method, putting all the information into that delivery method, writing all the emails that go to your current clients, like all of those little pieces, there can be categorized into these 3 different areas. So then I broke that down a little bit further. So if we look at all 3 of these areas. And then we break down into bite-sized pieces. So I'm taking the ebook example, and these are items that would go on your bucket list. And as you can see, just with this ebook, we have, how many are there here? 10? No, I can count. 9, 8 or 9 items that would go on your bucket list just for this one program. So choosing a topic, that could go on my bucket list. That's easy. Outlining chapters. Writing 20 pages, write 3 articles. I could also say write 100 pages. depending on how long I want the ebook to be. Put your outline or chapters into Scrivener. That's the software I use to write. Write for 2 hours with no distractions. Do a dance when you finish a chapter. Have someone else read your work. Read your own work. Depending on, sometimes it's scarier for us to read our own work, and sometimes it's absolutely terrifying to have someone else read our work. So that goes on the bucket list. So you'll see, last week when we talked about the bucket list, you want to have challenging items, easy items, ridiculous items, and items that are going to move you towards your goal. Obviously, doing a dance when you finish a chapter might not move you any faster towards your goal, but it's fun, it's weird, it's something you can check off, and it might keep you motivated. It kind of, adds a little fun into the actual process of working. Writing 20 pages, depending on if you're a prolific writer, may be a huge challenge, or that could be a breeze. Reading your own work, again, that's something that might not necessarily move you toward a goal, but you're going to have to edit it, so reading will move you toward your goal. But it's something that you can check off. It's easy. You just read it and check it off on your bucket list. So by doing it this way, you're doing a few things. You're planning ahead. You are breaking a huge project that could be overwhelming into bite-sized pieces, which makes it less overwhelming because you know what to do next. You're having fun with the process. You're making it easy to check items off, which, I don't know about you, but when I can check items off a list, it makes me very, very happy. And it's going to get you toward that 100 items that you want on your bucket list for next year. So the more items you have, the better. And then what you do is you put all these on like a big whiteboard or a big piece of paper on your wall. And when you are, you have a little downtime, you can look at your bucket list and see, can I cross anything off? Is there anything I can do right now to be able to cross things off of that list? And the more things you cross off, the more goals you are reaching and the more fun you're having while you're doing it. So I think that is all. So that is how to plan your offerings and how to break them down into bucket list sized items. If you have any questions, you can post them on the chat and I will answer them. Or if you have comments, things you'd like to add, things that are on your bucket list, please add those as well. Next week, we're going to be continuing with the bucket list theme, and we're going to be talking about reaching your marketing goals. So this week was about reaching your, creating your products goals. This next week is going to be about marketing. So how to choose your projects, how to choose your projects, how to break them down into bucket list sized items, and how to reach your marketing goals. How are you going to build that list of your dreams next year? How are you going to start getting people into your group programs? All of those, those things that go in that end up on your to-do list over and over and over again. We're going to talk about how to make those actually achievable. All right, so I am not seeing any questions, and if you have any topics you'd like to see for the laboratory, I'm looking at December and planning into 2015. So if you have any questions, specific questions that you want answered, topics that you'd like to see talked about, let me know by emailing holly@thelandofbrand.com. I don't see any questions or comments in the chat box. Actually, you know what? Hold on. Oh, you know what? I realized I didn't even enable the chat box all that time. Great. So I'm not sure if you can see that. If you couldn't see the chat box before, that doesn't help. Danielle says she private messaged me, so I think it's just because the chat box wasn't there. So she says to take the hundreds of Post-it notes that completely cover my kitchen table and organize them into a coaching program. Awesome. So Danielle wrote that must be one of the things that is on her bucket list. So she wants to take all the Post-it notes and organize them into a coaching program, which is, that's a big item, and good job. You can also break that down into even smaller into bringing the Post-it notes into your office, doing a dance when you have them in order, fleshing out those Post-it notes into actual modules, creating worksheets around those different modules. So there's all these different pieces that could go into creating just that one coaching program. So good. Thank you for sharing, Danielle. And I know that there's a little bit of a delay between me talking and you guys hearing. So some of you might be chatting into the chat box or typing into the chat box right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to close the webinar, and then I will just stay on the chat for a couple minutes and answer any last minute questions that come in. So I hope you all have a fantastic week, and I will see you next Wednesday when we're talking about reaching your marketing goals with your bucket list. Bye, everyone.